Okay, I'm here with Dr. Alan Goldberg today, one of the world's leading sports psychologists. He mainly concentrates on swimming, and so if you're watching this show, I'm sure you're heavily involved in swimming or interested in it. And Alan, if I'm right, you've helped a lot of swimmers over your career, including some very big names in our sport.
Well, yeah, I've been probably involved in swimming in this field since '89 or '88,
Got it.
and yeah, and I do a lot of work. I mean, I've been doing clubs around the country before the insanity that is COVID-19 hit.
It's
But
crazy.
mainly, yeah, really crazy. And mainly, what I do now is the one-on-one stuff remotely with swimmers who have specific performance issues.
And,
Handling pressure, performance blocks, that sort of thing.
and
Yeah.
we found that works really well, doesn't it? The online, especially when you have like a Zoom or something like that, and you can see the people's facial expressions. You can learn a lot, right?
Yeah, well, the way that I work, I base a lot of what I do on what goes on with a person's nervous system. So if I'm not seeing, sometimes you can pick up when you're listening just on the phone, but I need visual access to tap into as someone's talking about something, what's going on with their breathing, what's going on with their posture, their movement, that sort of thing. Very important.
So you really connect well. I mean, we've been actually working together for years, and I've hadn't talked to you for a while, quite a few years later, and it seems like it got away a little bit. And I remember I picked up the phone and talked to you the other day, and it was just like I never left. You connect so well to people. I think it's immediately they fall in love with your personality, and you just connect so well, and it makes all the difference, doesn't it, when you have that connection to people?
Well, I think with any kind of coaching, it's all about the relationship.
Right.
It's sort of like what you know doesn't make you a good coach. It's how you get it across. And really, the mark of a good coach is someone who creates a really safe container for their athletes, and helps them, feel safe about learning, failing, and excelling. The relationship really is the glue that binds the learning. And that's so important. And part of that is communicating. Part of that is being able to connect with people and listen, and also understanding that communication isn't just a one-way street. I talk, you
Right.
listen.
Right.
I talk, you listen, you talk back, and I listen to make sure that what I intended to get across, you understood.
So it's very interactive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, one of the rules of thumb I teach coaches all the time is the meaning of any communication
Mhm.
is the response it gets. So you may make a comment to a kid, which you would, maybe you're kidding, maybe you're just trying to get them to believe in themselves. If they respond by feeling put down, regardless of your intention, the meaning of your communication was a put down. And if you don't understand that once you speak or say or do anything, if you don't understand that, you then need to check out to make sure they got the message. If you
Mm.
don't know that, then there's immediately a disconnect.
That's very interesting. We say a lot of times there's the words that you say, right, and then there's the way that you say them, right,
Right,
and then
right.
and then so you have the actual words we call them magic words, magic tone, and then you
Hmm.
have magic body language,
Right,
and that,
right.
that makes a huge difference, right?
Well, I don't know where people come up with these statistics, but maybe it's so people who like me, who are supposed experts, sound intelligent. But what I used to teach around communication is 10% of the meaning of your communication, 10% are in the words you say, and the other 90%
Mhm.
is face tone, volume, tempo, expression, all that stuff. So most of communication is like nonverbal,
Mm.
and it's important that you have an awareness of that when you're interacting with kids. Very important.
So what got you interested in working with athletes to start with?
Well, I was a tennis player and still am. Played as a junior, played in college, taught tennis professionally. And one of the things that I discovered early on, before I knew anything about performance issues and the mental side of sports, was that, what goes on between your ears is absolutely critical to how well you perform.
And you can see that in tennis so easily, can't you? When a set just switches, right, and the match just switches to the other side, and it's going one way, and all of a sudden it just turns the other direction.
That's right. That's right. And I will tell tennis players, but it's really true for a lot of athletes. When you walk on the court, there's two matches that go on simultaneously. There's the physical match, where I pit my strength and my endurance and my stroke mechanics against yours. And then there's the mental side, which is, how well you handle frustration, what you just pointed out, John, how well you deal with your opponent making a run, that sort of thing. And my feeling is, everything being relatively equal, the person that wins the mental match is going to come out on top. And in swimming, there's no, years ago when I was writing for one of the magazines, I interviewed Mark Spitz. And Mark Spitz said something that I basically agree with. He said, getting good in this sport in practice is 90% physical and 10% mental. And he's right. I mean, in practice, you can't lie on a couch and spill Cheetos on your face and expect to get good. I mean, you have to pay your physical dues. Right. You have to have good mechanics, build a training base, etc. Then he said, once you get to a meet, the percentages flip-flop, and success is 90% mental and 10% physical. And I would disagree with Spitz at this point. I would say, once you get to a big meet, let's call it your championship, the taper meet, you have the training base, you have the muscle memory for good mechanics. Whether you swim well to your potential or not, as far as I'm concerned, is all mental. And not being weird about it, very specifically, has to do with what you focus on and think about before the race and what you focus on during the race. Because I'm one of these people that believes races are always won and lost before the start. And it's based on, what you focus on. I
agree with that. Yep.
What you focus on is going to affect how activated you are, how nervous you get. Focus on the right things, you'll be excited and relatively loose. Focus on the wrong things, and you'll be really nervous and physically tight, and then you therefore won't perform well.
So my next question, which I think you've already answered, is, great athletes train their body, and how important do you think it is for them to train their mind?
It's another training dimension. See, it is absolutely critical, if you want your athletes to be successful, that you work on the mental side, because when push comes to shove and you're in the middle of a big meet, whether you perform well or not, it's not because you don't have good stroke mechanics. It's not because you don't have a training base. It's because, my last event, I sucked, and I'm really upset, and I'm still thinking about it as I'm getting ready for my next event. And it's really mental. And my feeling is, you, as a coach, you can't afford not to work on this. Okay. It's sort of like, if you avoid working on the mental side, you're actually working against yourself. Okay.
And a lot of times they, if I'm right, they don't have the training or the tools, unfortunately, to handle that, because they're spending so much time learning about, the other aspects of training. And when you ask coaches, if you sit them in a room and you talk about, the different, what we call the cornerstones of athletic performance, which like fuels, right? Sleep, hydration, nutrition, oxygen, the energy systems that you're in water training, your strength and your flexibility, your technique and your mind, and your synergy, how you put them together. They'll come up originally with, it's the training that's the big deal. But after a little while, they'll all agree, and they'll all say it's 90% mental. Right. And then I always ask them this question is, so if it's actually 90% mental, what tools do you have to help your athletes, other than goal setting, which they all have, right? And they tell them they can do it, but to turn to someone like you that's an expert in this, to be able to guide people forward would be tremendous for any team or athlete, if I'm right.
Oh, without a doubt. And my feeling is, you don't have to be, a sports performance consultant like myself. You don't have to be a sports psychologist to be able to teach this stuff. You just have to understand the importance of it. And, classic example of this, about how important the mental side is. One of the most common problems I get with swimmers who come to work with me one-on-one, they go faster in practice than meets. Or, even more frustrating for them, they go faster in off events than their best events.
Oh yeah, but that's
And anybody who goes faster in practice than they do when they race, the main reason for that is when they're in practice, they're focusing on the right stuff. They're not pressuring themselves with outcome. They're not thinking about who's around them. What they're doing instead is focusing on their movement in the water. They're focusing on staying long, how much water they're pulling, stuff like that. But yet that same swimmer who swims great in practice, when they get into their event, their best event, all of a sudden now they go, now it counts.
There's the pressure.
This is important. And they have an outcome focus, or they worry about disappointing, parents or coaches, but they're in their head instead of doing what they do when they swim well, which is focusing on the feel of the movement,
So they're once they get in what we'd call like hot mode, right, or emotional mode, right, then all of a sudden maybe they're having some kind of negative emotion that's impacting them.
Right. Yeah. I think what happens is inadvertently they change their mental strategies. They change their approach to the swim. Okay. And, people aren't aware that they have mental strategies, but any swimmer who does better in an off event or in practice than the best event or a meet, when they do well, their mental strategies are right on. They're paying attention. See, swimming fast is about paying attention to the feel of your movement. Okay. Staying long, your tempo, how much water you're pulling, it varies depending on your stroke. But then what happens is they get into a meet, they get into their race, and without knowing it, they change their mental approach. They're now overthinking, focused on outcome, worried about their competition, and all of those things detract from swimming fast. They make us anxious, they tighten us up physically, and we then perform poorly as a result.
And so when you're dealing with athletes, you're able to kind of loosen that up for them and help them see what's happening. Is that right?
See, that's the key. Help them see what's happening. The foundation of change and the foundation of mental toughness is awareness. If I struggle with, I go faster in practice than I do in meets, I need to become aware of what I'm doing when I swim fast and what I do when I'm struggling. If I don't have that awareness, then I'm going to keep making the same mistakes. So I
so
help
recognizing that it exists,
yes,
and then recognizing you can change it, and then getting a strategy to change it.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And what I really try to do ultimately is the how. Mm-hmm. Give athletes tools so that when they're in meets and they're under pressure, they're not making the same mistakes over and over again. They now have ways of correcting them.
Got it. Wow. Fantastic. Now, and you said there's things that coaches and parents can do to help their swimmers become mentally stronger as well?
Well, let's talk about parents first.
Okay.
Not that any swim coach has ever.
I see that big smile on that
one. Oh, yeah. There's a joke that goes around in swimming clinics, which is the ideal team for a coach to work with. The ideal swim team is a team of orphans. Okay, because then you don't have to deal with the parents. Except, I certainly I say that tongue in cheek, because
right.
A coach needs parents to be successful. But the thing that parents need to understand is they have a specific role on the team. If they want their kid to become mentally tough, enjoy the sport, perform well under pressure, and go as far as possible, they have a certain role. And it's very simple, okay, as far as I'm concerned. And I always frame this in terms of performance issues, because a lot of parents will say and do things that are detrimental to their kids swimming, but they mean well, and they're only saying and doing it because they want to be helpful. But basically the two key roles a parent has is to be unconditionally loving and supportive of their kid. And in a way, John, that has nothing to do with their outcome, with performance. So the first job a parent has is to be supportive, okay? And the second is to not coach. And what I usually do with parents is then spell out what coaching is.
Right. I think I learned that. I think I've got enough experience. I do not coach my children. That's it. As much as background as I have on it, I don't do it.
Well, it's not at all unusual for swim coaches to end up coaching their kids.
Right.
It's and it's possible to do it, but it's difficult because
right.
the roles don't go together. A coach's job is to push an athlete out of their comfort zone, to be supportive, of course, but to get them to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay. And a parent's job is to be, unconditionally loving and supportive, and not to coach, and not to try to motivate, and a lot of the things that parents do because they think it's helpful is they get their kids focusing on other swimmers. So-and-so did this time, you need to beat them. Or they do coaching. They do pre-meet coaching on the car ride there. Okay.
Right. Here's what you need to do type of thing.
Exactly. And then on the car ride back, they tell the kid everything the kid did wrong. Now, here's the deal, John. Even if they're technically right, they're wrong because it's not their job, So I guess what I'm saying is what parents need to understand that if they really want their kid to go far, they don't have to do much. They just need to be loving. They need to show up, enjoy their kid's sport, and be a good role model and not coach. Don't time your kid. Don't video your kid and force them to watch the videos. Don't break their stroke down. That's, the coach's job, not your job.
Right. And if you take that role, the child gets confused.
Absolutely.
Right? And they don't know, are you dad or where are you right now? Are you dad or are you coach? And they when that blurs, if I'm right, you can lose trust.
You can lose trust. And unfortunately, what that does for kids is if dad is really over involved in my swimming and, critiquing me and doing that, and clearly I can see when that happens, they sometimes get frustrated if I don't do well. Then what the parent's doing inadvertently is they're creating a really significant form of performance anxiety for me as the kid, as the swimmer. And because all of us, when we're kids, we're hardwired to make our parents proud. And if we feel like if we're struggling and we feel like we're disappointing them, when we get up on the blocks, there's a lot more at stake than the 100 free.
That's right.
I'm swimming right now, so for my dad or my mom's love.
Even if I don't know it.
Well, that's right.
Well, I'm unaware of it at that point.
Good point, because most kids aren't. But what they are aware of is feeling incredibly anxious.
Right. So stomach. You can get physical manifestations of that as well, right? Your stomach can hurt. You can, right?
All the time. And it's just, it's not rocket science. It's hard to do because it's very evocative when you're a parent and you have a kid who's competing, and you want to be helpful. That's fine. But the way to be helpful is to play your role on the team. And when I say the team, the parent, coach, swimmer team, to the best of your ability. And that means, unconditionally loving, you don't coach, you show up, you are supportive.
Right. Right. So at Fluid Mechanics, our MindWorks program that we have gives the teams tools to help their swimmers focus more effectively, put their emotion to work for them, and kind of unleash their ability to progress. But although it's a great baseline training program for any athlete, which starts like the mental development process, we aren't psychologists. We don't pretend to be psychologists because we know when somebody really needs help, right? There's a point where athletes need like specialized mental guidance that's individualized for them. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, like the kids that end up coming to see me, like I might do clubs around the country, and from my talks, I will get specific referrals from individual swimmers.
And I've heard that those are absolutely fantastic too, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Back in the day when those were possible. So the kids that come to see me have specific performance problems that they have not been able, they might have listened to some of my audio stuff, read some of my books, but they're still stuck. So
we've actually sent some of our swimmers to you, and you're so good. I remember one of the people we sent ended up being a consultant for us later, and you were so helpful to him. He said it was just really, you gave him some steps, he took the steps, and they worked.
Yeah, cool. Well, I really try to present this stuff in a down-to-earth way.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, when you listen to me talk, because I don't want to sound like, a shrink, and I'm not anyway, and I'm not even a psychologist. I'm, to call myself a sports psychologist, I would need to be licensed. Okay. And while I have a doctorate and I've been doing this for 38 years or whatever, I'm not a licensed psychologist. So
but you certainly can help swimmers.
without a doubt. Without a doubt. But so the kids that end up with me have specific repetitive problems. Mm-hmm. They choke under pressure. They throw up before races. They have confidence issues. Or what I mentioned before, they're ripping off really fast times in practice, and it's kind of like they go to a meet and it's that old movie, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Someone else shows up in their body and they don't swim well. Those are the issues that I deal with one-on-one.
So do you focus in your practice? Do you focus on, because we have a spectrum of people that are trying to get to the point where they can compete at the level, and then you have these other people that are trying to really expand, kind of like go beyond. I think you work with both. Is that right? Both sides?
Yeah. I mean, I work with all different levels of athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I work with Olympic swimmers. I mean, I work across all sports. We were talking about this before. About 60% of my work nationally and internationally is in swimming. Mm-hmm. But most of the people I work with are kids who are, club swimmers, anywhere from 8, 9 and up, mm-hmm. right through college. I have a smattering of Olympians and a smattering of professional athletes, but the vast majority of people I work with are serious about their sport, but they might not make it to the Olympics. They might very well swim in college if we're going to talk about the swimming population.
Right.
But and they might not all be D1.
And at what point? What's the point where an athlete should, in your opinion, how do they identify the fact that it's time to reach out to you or someone like you?
Their anxiety from racing is interfering with their lives. They're starting to hate the sport. They're depressed about it. They're really thinking, they're questioning whether they should leave or not because of their performance difficulties.
The dinner table is quiet.
Yeah, they're in pain, and then the family's in pain if the kid's in pain.
Right.
So, I mean, then it's time. I mean, this is going to sound stupid, but, swimming's supposed to be fun, and the kids that come to see me, they're not having fun, John. They're miserable. And there's something wrong with that because unless you're having fun, and we're talking about even the Olympic caliber swims, if you're not looking forward to the challenge of this, if you're not what I call enjoying the dance, all of it, the butterflies in your stomach, you're not going to perform well. You have to be enjoying what you're doing. You have to be passionate about it in order to be successful.
So internal versus external motivation, like the coach pushing you or the parent pushing you, versus the one that owns it inside themselves that wants to compete.
Yeah. You have to have, this is a very hard sport. Okay. I will sometimes joke when I'm talking to groups of swimmers that this is a masochist sport. In order to get good, you got to be in pain. And any endurance sport is like that.
Doc Councilman used to say that too. You got to be a little masochistic.
Well, there's no question about it. You got to push yourself towards discomfort. And when you move towards it and you feel it more, you got to go after it even more. Right. You have to have a good reason to do that. And the reason has to be your reason. In other words, you have to take ownership as a swimmer of of why you're doing it, your sport. You can't do it to make other people happy. You can't do it so you don't disappoint other people. You have to do it because you want something. Now, it might just be that you love the sport. You don't give a hill of beans about going to the Olympics, but you're passionate about it. And that's a fine reason to do it. Or you have goals. You want to get a college scholarship, or you want to get an Olympic trials cut, or whatever. But in this sport, and I talk about having a big enough why, WHY, with kids. You have to have an emotionally compelling reason that helps you train, that motivates you. And key thing with goals, see, a lot of swimmers don't understand this. And one of the sources of their performance problems is they bring their goals into meets with them. Okay, we want goals, but our goals are a motivational tool for training only and to get us to work hard right now.
It's like a carrot, right?
Exactly. But you don't need the carrot in a meet.
Right.
There's enough excitement, activation, as we say, in a meet. You don't need to pressure yourself with outcome.
Take the carrot away and let the horse run. Is that it?
That's right. Well, listen, the Olympic swimmers I've worked with before and listened to talk, they all say the same thing when it's race time. You could be in the finals of your event for the Olympics, biggest race of your life. And the ones who are successful, when they're behind the blocks, they go, I've done everything I possibly can. I've been working my butt off. Let's just see what happens.
Right.
Rather than, oh my God, this is the finals of the Olympics. I've been working on this for 6 years. I have to do this. I'm swimming for my country. Oh my God, what if right. It will fall apart?
So they're fearing failure in a way versus like going after that, right? What they want to do.
But letting go and just trusting the muscle memory, your training base, all the work you've done, and just letting it happen. You can't force yourself or scare yourself into a peak performance. You have to relax into it.
Wow, that's a great statement. Can you say that again? You can't force?
You can't force yourself or scare yourself into a peak performance. It's kind of like getting in the zone. You don't get in the zone because you try to get in the zone. You're in the zone because you're focused on the right stuff and you let it happen. There's a let it happen headset that's necessary for swimmers to go fast under pressure. It can't be a make it happen headset.
And being a very psychological and emotional athlete myself, when I was performing, I think your advice that you're just giving this small bit of advice to us right now is so powerful, and so to me, again, I've raced some of the greatest swimmers in the world, and I beat most of the ones that I raced. But there was times where it was difficult as well. That happens for all of us. And having someone like you to be able, I think it would be like having like a secret weapon, behind you. But so really, I always feel like you don't always need. It's not just when you're in the bad times. You can always use like somebody to help coach you mentally to get forward, so you're prepared when the bad times come to deal with them.
Well, exactly. Yeah, this work should not be crisis intervention work.
Right.
It should not be just. I do that, right. But it shouldn't be just for any swimmer who has performance problems. It's a training dimension, and like I said before, if swimming fast under pressure is all mental, you need to work on that. You need to develop the skills. It's an old myth, and I think a lot of people don't buy into it anymore, but there used to be a stigma to doing any kind of mental training. It meant that there was something wrong with you.
Oh my gosh. You know what? You don't wait until your car is broken down in a gutter to say, gee, I think I need some oil.
Right. You're right. It's a training dimension, and it's preventative, and it builds mental toughness. And it's important for any coach to work this in on a weekly basis and not taking extra time. One of the things when I've done coaching clinics and talked to coaches is that you don't have a lot of extra time. You can't add more hours to do mental training. But what you can do is integrate what you're doing, mental strategies into your warm up, into, if the kids do stretching before they get in the water, in there, and into the sets. There are ways that these kids can practice the skills they need when they race.
And your work is in so many ways supporting what the coach is trying to get accomplished, and sometimes doesn't have the time to do everything, right?
Yes.
And right, so you're able to help that on the side. It's not interrupting their time with the coach, and it's just helping in every direction.
Exactly.
Now,
exactly. That's the key. Yeah.
Recently, there's been a lot of notoriety, and I don't know if that's the right word, but recently there's been 12 major aspects identified by the IOC, or the International Olympic Committee, that have come out focusing on mental health in athletes, elite athletes. And I want to be really careful not to scare parents that are thinking about putting their athletes into, and their kids into athletics, because that's not what this is about. But what it is about is making sure while they're in there, is making sure they get the support they need and being healthy. And I'm just thinking of how important it's going to be to have incredible experts like yourself to shed light on how we can begin to tackle some of these problems. And we need to get effective tools onto the deck with our coaches, in the water with our swimmers, and at home with our parents for any supportive things that they need to do, and all working in a coordinated effort to support our athletes. And I'm wondering, I'm just going to ask you this, because I know at some point, I'd love to talk to you for a week. I could easily do that. But we're hoping at some point you'll come back and join us again as we start our series on how we can protect our amazing athletes and keep them healthy, happy, and productive in their sport.
Right. Yeah, I'd absolutely love to do that. But let me just, what you're talking about is absolutely critical. We're in this country, we're obsessed with sports. It's the religion we all worship, and the god of that religion is winning. And I think with the high-level swimmers, there is an excessive amount of pressure to just focus on outcome. Okay. And what gets lost in that is the fact that these swimmers are living, breathing, feeling organisms.
Oh, they're actually people.
Well, oh yeah, it's like shocking, and I think that gets lost. USA Gymnastics has been going through this. There's been a culture of physical and emotional abuse, and that is normalized as this is what's necessary to get kids to perform at the highest level. And that is wrong. What that does is that creates a lot of significant lifelong trauma in these kids. And they
almost lose their values sometimes as people.
But
right?
It's dehumanizing. That's right on, John. It's sort of like, and it's what the weight of gold, the clip, the movie that Michael Phelps was in.
Phelps, right? Yeah.
There is so much pressure to be the best, and when you're the best, you can't show that you're human. Meaning, I get anxious a lot, or I'm really depressed, or I have like thoughts of hurting myself. It's kind of like there's this unspoken rule: you can't be human. You can't.
Right, and they have like eating disorders that manifest in all kinds of things, right?
Absolutely. That's all a product, as far as I'm concerned, of our over focusing on outcome. So
athletics can go through be a very healthy thing for people, and it also can turn into a very unhealthy thing if it gets onto the wrong foot.
Exactly. And my feeling is it is dependent on the people who are in charge, the adults in charge, the coaches, administrators, that sort of thing.
They have to be prepared to guide, right? And they've got to equipped to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right on. And, treat people as, they're athletes first. Mm-hmm. And see, the irony here is if you do that, they're going to perform better.
Right.
They're
going to feel better about themselves.
Bingo. And then therefore they will have more capacity to handle stress and to deal with adversity. And when you avoid that stuff, when you give the message you can't show any kind of weakness, that just creates more problems.
So Alan, I'm hoping, as I mentioned, as we develop this series, that we can have incredible experts like yourself contributing. But people can actually, if I'm right, they can work directly with you if they want. Is that right?
Right.
One-on-one?
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what I do these days because I'm not traveling to clubs. But so I work one-on-one over Skype or Zoom or FaceTime with athletes who are having, specific performance issues, or they just want to develop mental toughness. That
Fantastic.
sort of thing.
So
Yep.
I think we're going to probably include a link on this program so they can get to you and find out that information. We're also going to include a link so they can try our baseline program for mental development. And we are so excited with what you're doing and have been doing for the community of swimming. And really, I think if anybody can get that help, and I think they'd be really fortunate to get a chance to work with you.
Yeah. Well, always open to it.
I know I feel that way just listening. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your time. It's been great.
Oh, great to talk to you, John, as always.
Okay. Take care. Thanks.
Okay. See you.